Hello, everyone, and welcome to our continued playoffs coverage here on Hotline League. It is Monday, June the 2nd, and we are excited because we have finally, after millennia, brought a pro player on here. All it took was Kangas going crazy on social media. Before we introduced that guest, though, I do want to go ahead and shout out my co-host here. Cubby, how's it going?
Good. The co-host that was unable to find a guest as Kangas continues to, come for the co-host chair. Rightfully
Yes.
so. But yeah, excited to talk with Jet/Srtty today. Should be fun.
Yeah, you were just traveling a little bit. You landed
Yeah.
last night. What's going on?
I was in Raleigh this past weekend. I was able to do an NACL cast from there, but we had CLOL finals. So congrats to Maryville on their 3-0. They got to win. First time they won in 6 years. And the jungler that subbed in for Yuji was actually a kid that I coached previously. So it was fun to see Shimmer kind of step up. And he always talked a big game. So I'm glad he got the chance to back it up.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you had a good time. Well, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. We can also talk about near airport, I guess,
Yeah.
and all that in just a little bit. But none other than Srtty is joining here. Cubby already leaked it, but Srtty is joining us. Srtty, how have things been in the world of Dignitas?
They're definitely a little better before we lost, I'd say.
Yeah.
As all things are, sunshine and roses. But I think we're all kind of surprised that we lost to TL. We all thought we'd have a pretty good chance. We did pretty well versus them the last few weeks that we versed them, like off stage. But yeah, now it's kind of just like on to the next thing, on to the new. See where we go from here.
I think a lot of people, don't always have the best insight into like what happens after a team loses in playoffs, because obviously now there's like a very long downtime between your last game and your upcoming game. So can you give us a little bit of insight into like what happens in the immediate thing? I'm sure there's sort of a let's all go get dinner and talk about it, or maybe everybody goes off in their different directions and says fuck you guys, I'll see you in a month. Like what actually happens behind the scenes?
I think it depends on the team. Some teams might go out and have a team dinner to conclude things. Everybody gets together, like says they'll see you in a month or however long during off season, and goes and do their own stuff. For us at Dig, we kind of all went our separate ways that night. We didn't really go out and have dinner together or anything. I kind of just went and did my own thing. Everybody else did the same thing. And then over the next 2 or 3 days, they're usually meetings with coaches, general managers, talking next split, talking what's going to happen, all of that kind of jazz, just like getting our ducks in a row before we take a bit of a break, because during season you're usually quite locked in, like long hours. It's important to take rest when you can get it,
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. I think it's always different for every team. I know some people go boot camp, some people do this other stuff, so it's interesting to hear how you all are approaching it. But we are really happy to have you here because, in part, one of the things that I want to thank you for coming on is the conundrum I often face during playoffs. I mean, lately it's been hard to get pro players to do a lot of content in general, but the conundrum I often face is that playoffs, the people that are in are like, okay, I can't do anything else. I got to focus on playoffs. Every moment has to be playing. Then the people that are out are like, fuck League of Legends. I'm done until they bring me back. So I'm glad that you were down to take the time.
I mean, yeah, of course, there's no downside. I mean, I've been watching this show for like well over a year now, I think. I mean, I think everybody who's coming up to like the tier 2 scene and is interested in tier 1 likes to watch this because, get to hear different people's takes and how you guys react to them. So it's kind of exciting to actually be here.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you here. I do want to give a big shout out to NZXT for sponsoring the show. Just did some unboxing stuff that I recorded for them earlier today with Drew. So talk more about that later on in the show. But great to have them on as a partner. You can find a link to them in the description. But yeah, Cubby, I know that you've been catching up a lot on the LTA stuff this past weekend, but you mentioned briefly what you were up to. Maybe before we get to the LTA conversations, we can get sort of a, how did all of your adventures go down?
The show was all right. Shout out to all the students at NC State that helped us out. There was an incident where I might have tried to draw some stuff on a whiteboard that we didn't exactly rehearse. We didn't know if we were going to have replays, so we went for it and it did not work. That was not great. Besides that, though, it was fun. And yeah, it was cool to see Maryville hoist it. Again, they work really hard over there, as I know Srtty knows too.
Yes.
And yeah, NACL, I was able to cast a game there. So shout out to NC State again for helping me farm 2-day rates. That was always a plus. And then I traveled back, slept, and casted Top Esports versus BLG last night, where BLG had a 3-0 smashing of a Top Esports that looked pretty terrible at some points. But that was fun. I'm still kind of recovering from all my travels and schedules, but I am caught up on the games because I was able to watch a lot of the games while we were out there. So that was good.
Yeah. Okay. I know, Srtty, you said that you guys were surprised that you lost to Team Liquid. I think many pundits and the audience as a whole were probably expecting the Team Liquid win. I think you guys were the underdogs in terms of the community perception. Yeah. But I think the another set of players that people expected to win this weekend were the 100 Thieves players, and they got 3-0'd by SR. And I think last week there was some debate. You know, we were kind of going back and forth, Cubby, but you and I think Raz all thought that 100 Thieves was going to come out ahead on that. So what were your thoughts on the matches as you were catching up?
I really hated how 100 Thieves drafted in game 3. They said it too. I thought that game 1 was a mess, and then game 2, SR, I slightly preferred their draft and they played well. I do think that a lot of the oopsies or errors that 100 Thieves have kind of been getting away with from the last few splits have started to add up. And I know that, like, when they first came out of the scene that spring, and they had like the really good regular season, but everyone called them a fraud, and they were in playoffs. And then they had a bad regular season, but bounced back in summer to go to Worlds. But that was obviously a bummer. This kind of feels like the first split where they actually did take a step back. So I'll be interested to see what happens there. I thought the addition of FBI was really good for them, but it didn't pan out as well as they hoped in the end. So I'm kind of curious to see what's up.
Any other changes you can think of that might have impacted their loss to SR?
No, what do you think, Travis?
Well, DeMonte. I think everybody's making DeMonte jokes, right? So, I mean, and they're like half jokes.
Yeah, I mean it's half jokes. Like, again, I like Tanner. I think that he tries to get the best out of people. I know that, like, Srtty, you would have worked with him at FlyQuest, so you might be able to speak
a little bit, yeah.
More. Yeah,
I would say for DeMonte, it seems like whatever team he joins ends up doing better with him than without him. I don't know how much I would attribute that to in-game analysis type things, or like as opposed to the way that he can handle personalities and bring people together and raise them up, which I think is like very valuable to have inside of a team. But I'd say if you were on that SR roster and you were losing a lot, there would be a lot of tension, and things would be starting to get pretty bad pretty fast because we've had players that have seen a lot of success in the past, right? So I think the addition of him probably took a big weight off of everybody's shoulders. Sometimes people just want change in one form or another, even if it's in the coaching staff. It can still help a lot. I think it mattered a lot for them.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've noticed is you have these teams that seem to slump pretty hard as brands, you know, the Immortals and teams like that in the past, where it's just like they can't seem to get themselves out of those last place positions. And I think oftentimes it kind of becomes this weird self-fulfilling prophecy where, oh, we're a bad team. Can we do better? Oh, no, we're starting to lose. Oh, that's because we're a bad team. Okay, that's why we're going to lose. Okay, we lost. Are we going to do well this split, etc.? And you kind of end up in this loop. And I kind of am starting to feel like DeMonte can be a bit of a loop breaker, I guess, in that sense. Like he seems to be able to reset mentalities for teams and players in pretty positive ways. So I think this is one of the best examples of that, quite frankly, because many people, including myself, were kind of SR doubters, and like a 3-0 against 100 Thieves is pretty serious.
I've never seen Revan like that animated, you know.
You've made this joke 2 weeks in a row, Cubby.
I know, but I think it matters. Like, I think that what DeMonte does well, kind of going off of what Srtty was saying, like, does he add a ton to the game? I don't know, but he for sure can speak the game's language. And when you're able to do that and connect with the people and get more out of them that way, I know that he's done a lot of homework in terms of bringing people together and what it means to be a team. And he's been able to demonstrate that where he's been. Like, that's the kind of stuff that if you get the most out of the people, you're going to get more out of the players. And it really feels like wherever he goes, he's able to do that. So Yeah, it's fun seeing Revan that animated because I've always viewed Revan as like very smart about the game, but I always like wasn't sure if he could lead everyone, especially because in the past a lot of his teams have been his own guys with SR. Like everyone worked with Revan last year, so I think that when the roster fails, it's kind of like on you as a coach if everyone has worked with you. But to have Demonte come in and obviously he's worked with some of these guys too, everyone feels like they're the vibes are good over there. So yeah, we'll see what happens next week. I don't think that they go further than this, but they for sure have taken steps forward.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. I'm sure people will call in and that type of thing. I think the other topics we're looking to talk about tonight, I released a video today that went way further than I expected it to go in terms of reception from people. I think I've talked on previous episodes of the show that I had started to get converted away from the sort of mentality that I had. I say in the beginning that like Cubby and I had conversations at the beginning of this year where I was like, I feel like we can't keep just saying, oh, why is it LTA, not LCS? Like, this is a bad idea. And that, we just needed to kind of accept it, move on, and start calling it LTA and all that type of thing. But I think as we hit May, I was starting to just feel like this is just not working. It's been 5 months now, 6 months maybe since the time it got announced, and there's still no seemingly excited adoption of the brand. People that work directly on the product that I know still called LCS. They're annoyed about the fact that it's called LTA. Like, it's just, in a lot of cases you do something where you show like a new logo and everybody hates the logo, or the new UI and everybody hates the UI, and then like a month later everybody's like, oh, don't change this logo or this UI. That has not happened at all with the LTA brand.
Yeah.
So I did a big video about it. It's on. I compared it a lot to HBO Max. For those that live internationally, I know we have some international callers, and maybe you don't have. I don't know how prevalent HBO Max is as a brand outside of the US, but HBO, known for having a million different names for their streaming service, a while back eventually just called it Max when they merged, I think, with Discovery, and recently did a big campaign memeing themselves about how much they change their names all the time and all this stuff, and that they finally decided to go back to HBO Max because that's what everybody was calling it, and the brand and all update and all that stuff was failed. And so I basically call for us to do something similar to that. There's a lot more stuff in the video. People can go watch it if they want, but I've been surprised at how much it popped off. Like, it got to the #1 on the subreddit almost immediately. It's gotten tons of Twitter engagement. It feels like it's kind of like the pressure valve releasing for a lot of people who feel that way. And I will say, favorites or likes on Twitter are now private. But if they weren't, you all could see how many people working on the LCS product are liking this tweet. I will not disclose their names, but like the takeaway from the Twitter activity is that a lot of people internally and or at teams or whatever all feel similarly. So I don't know if anybody wants to call in about that, but I do feel like we have a lot of stuff going on there. And while I had with Cubby a moratorium on LCS LTA conversations, I think maybe we could squeeze one or two in tonight in light of the tweet. The other funny thing I will say is I did, just for fun, in reply to the tweet, I did a poll that was like, how excited are you for the LTA brand? 3.7% of people said I'm into it. And everyone else said I'm either ambivalent or I don't like it, with over 75% of people saying I don't like it. So I would say if you're going to create a new brand that you want people to be excited about, 5 months later, them overwhelmingly saying they don't like it is probably not a good sign. So I think we can talk about that. What other interesting stuff? Near Airport. You want to talk? What's the update with Near Airport, Cubby?
Yes, they dropped 3-1 to Conviction, a team of, I'd say, younger players. I know Srtty would be kind of familiar with those guys. Some of them have competed in NACL in the past. 2 of them being your teammates you won CLOL with, of course, in Dark Wings and Aaron/Chrome. So yeah, there was a post about that Double kind of did his own moratorium of Near Airport and their split. And we're going to see what happens with them moving forward. It seems like they still want to compete. Of course, the true golden nugget in NACL this year exists in summer, because in summer you're competing for an LTA slot at the end. So spring, not so much.
Well,
Yeah, the promotion will be interesting.
Yeah.
Srtty, I was going to ask how surprised you were by those results.
I was surprised and I wasn't. We've scrimmed Conviction a few times, like Dig as a team. We haven't ever lost a game to them, but sometimes they do some good things. And I also have like some amount of faith, especially in Darkwings, to make relatively consistent, like decent decisions. And in NACL, that's kind of all you need to do to win. If you can provide a path forward to progress the game in any way, shape, or form that is like relatively good, you'll usually win in Tier 2. And I think that he's not bad at doing that. He's not bad at like lane assignments and stuff inside of the mid game. So with how little near airport was scrimming, I definitely can see Conviction beating them. I definitely don't think that near airport was going to be able to win the tournament. I don't think they'd get through Dark Zero or Luminosity. But I think there was a little. Them losing to Conviction was maybe a little fast, but I think that they wouldn't have gone much further either way.
Yeah. How about yourself, Cubby? I know that I feel like when Near Airport showed up, a lot of people thought, "Oh, they'll be in the finals," but I don't. So I don't know how surprised you were, or if your approximation of their talent had changed over time, etc.
There was a clear top 3. They were in it as the scene or the split went on. They kind of went from being competitive, like with LG, to being like the clear third out of those. And Conviction was on the rise. I was a little bit surprised that it was a 3-1, but if I look back at the games and drafts, not so much. And yeah, like I do feel like Near Airport towards the back half, as Srtty said, like regardless of who you are and what kind of pedigree you have, it's a lot harder to win when you're practicing like for 2/3 as much as other teams. So
Yeah.
I know Conviction also had like a lot of schedules to work around too. Like Chrome has been very public that he's working a job as a barista to keep on doing this as well, and had some pretty banger tweets of like 8-time LCS champion versus 8-time can I take your order. So it's pretty fun. But yeah, I predicted Near Airport to win that series. I'm not super surprised, but I think a lot of fans would be.
Yeah. We have some DSG news, I believe. What's been going on over there, Cubby?
Rahel is confirmed to be in. In their words, well, it leaked already. So Rahel's in. And it seems like Jerry is going to be still with the roster as a backup / maybe streaming too, but still with DSG. But yeah, that's we'll see what happens with mid.
They need a native player, right? If
They
I'm not
do need a native
mistaken.
player now. Correct.
I'm not sure who it could be then, because in my opinion, from watching Tier 2 this year and playing in it before, I mean, I won it, there aren't many native players who I think can compete at an LTA level in that role right now. I think anybody that they bring up is going to be worse than Abadage was.
I kind of
actually
agree
believe that.
outside of Toasty. I think Toasty's probably the hope.
I think
I
Toasty
don't
is
know him.
probably the person that they're going to promote if they can get him out of his. He's on Dark Zero too, right?
Yeah.
So that contract's going to be a little hard to get out of because Dark Zero is trying to play for promotion, right? So they're not going to want to let him go.
Yes, that is actually something that has been going on behind the scenes too, Travis. I don't know how much you know about that. Buyouts are back.
They are.
Buyouts are back.
Buyouts are back.
Not big, but they're back.
Yeah.
Well, Srtty, let me ask you: if you're Toasty, which team do you want to be on?
Dark Zero or DSG?
Yeah.
He's not starting at Dark Zero, but
yeah. I would say if he has the opportunity to join DSG, the expectations are pretty low. So like if you join and you look remotely good, or the team looks even like slightly better, which they could with Rahel, because I think we all agree that Rahel is an upgrade to Jerry. I don't think that Jerry was like this guy's worst player or anything, but
yeah,
I think that Rahel is like a higher tier. And like if any of that credit gets attributed to Toasty from joining the roster, just a net positive for him. So I don't really see why he wouldn't do it if he has the option. Just makes sense, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I see people in Twitch chat saying the audio is out of sync. It's horrible. Yeah. We unfortunately can't use Skype anymore. And so we're using other solutions that people have all suggested that I use for many years. And lo and behold, it's not working great. You guys get what you asked for. What I've noticed is it goes out of sync and then comes back into sync and all this stuff. So whenever you see it go out of sync for a little bit, it'll get better. I just don't have a great solution. All right. So we will talk more about that as well, I'm sure, if somebody wants to call in. Other than that, I think mostly that covers everything we should talk about if folks want to call in with predictions for this coming week's matches. Would love to have you all give your insights, your thoughts. Did we have... I can't even check on lawesports.com anymore, but I guess we have the Split 2 awards are out now. So we've got coaching staff of the Split, and then we have first team All-Pro. That's what we can talk about. Were you surprised, Cubby, to see such a diverse lineup of players on the first team All-Pro?
I was a bit, because my ballot wasn't 5 FlyQuest players. So, yeah, I don't know what Srtty thinks. I actually had Thanatos over Blippo. I know that Blippo fathered him in their series, but I thought that Thanatos, pound for pound, actually just had a better split. And I might have had... I think I ended up going with Quad first team.
You did. I'm looking at the ballot right now. You had Quad. I had Loki.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then other than that, ours were the same. Yeah, you had Masu. You were Thanatos-inspired Quad, Masu, Busio. Can you really quickly, Cubby, justify... Because this was one of the highest thumbs up comments that somebody had last week, which was that...
Was it Impact third team?
It was Impact third team. But people were saying, you guys don't remember which coaching staff you voted for in each position. That's why these awards are a joke. So I just thought we would address that really quickly, because that was one of our higher reacted to comments last week on the YouTube pod.
I mean, the coach of the Split Award is a joke. I'm going to be honest. I have no idea what.
Okay, I was coming at it as, hey, we care about these. I think they were saying it in a disparaging way. Like, you guys don't actually care about voting in the system, and that's why you don't remember.
I was very proud that this is the first official ballot I had. So that's very false. But no, the coaching staff of the Split, you ask any voter, we have no idea what all the coaching staffs do.
You make educated guesses, right?
Yes, you do. It goes to good teams or teams that improved. So that's why I had FlyQuest D9 SR, Yeah.
Yeah. Who voted for your team, Srtty?
I think it was Isles, maybe? Or
Isles.
Our coaches?
Isles did, yes.
I think he was very confused when he was trying to choose third team All-Pro top laner. I think everybody was a bit confused, because I think after the top two of Brippo and Thanatos, everyone was kind of mediocre,
Yeah, he chose Fudge.
Yes. I think that's valid. I mean, Fudge has had a bit of a resurgence in a way.
Yeah.
In the second half of the split, whereas everybody else kind of looked to maintain similar level of badness, I guess.
Yeah. If you look at the third team All-Pro top lane thing, it's like Fudge, Impact, Sniper, Fudge, Impact, Sniper, Sniper, Impact, Fudge, Fudge, Sniper, Impact. I think that's basically everybody's threw one of those three in there, so it was kind of random.
I almost went Fudge over Impact. I think that Impact's demise was kind of exaggerated. He still does his job, but Fudge's been playing well. He was really good in the last series too.
I would have said Impact, just because I think that there are a lot of things inside of the game that aren't visible to a spectator that he does well, and I think that Fudge is... I think Impact and Fudge both played bad this split. I think every top other than Thanatos and Brippo played bad this split, but from an intangible point of view, I think that in my head, Impact would have to bring more to TL than Fudge did to SR up until playoffs. That makes sense in my head.
Yeah.
But I think it can go either way.
Yeah. All right, so we can have people call in about All-Pro, and then obviously this weekend we have Fly versus C9 and SR versus TL. I think the Fly versus C9 match in particular is going to be really spicy. I'm wondering if we have a lot of SR believers after their victory this weekend. Maybe they think they're going to dethrone Team Liquid. So we'll get into all those calls in just a little bit. But Cubby, do you want to explain how people can call into the show? We had some lighter callers last week, but I think this week there's a lot more to talk about. So we'll probably get some more.
Oh, it's because we got Srtty on the show. He's saving us. But if you guys want to talk to us and Srtty, go into our Discord, discord.gg/Travis, and then @Cubby. And we'll pull you into the waiting room if your take's good. We have a few takes already. So Still have room for more, though. We're not set in stone. Definitely want something on the C9 Fly match. I don't know or don't think we have something on there yet. Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. And if you are a sub, first off, or a member on YouTube, sub on Twitch, member on YouTube, first off, thank you for supporting the show. But also you can get access to the subtopics channel, which moves a little bit slower. We check both. And so if you would like to put your takes in there, that's a good option for you. You have access to sub calls thing too as well for us to play from there. But yeah, it looks like we have a ton of people in the waiting room, as you said. So I think we can just go ahead and hop in. Grab the first call.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, he is doing that. Thank you so much to Jeremy for 5 gifted memberships, holding it down for YouTube. And YouTube, because of Jeremy, taking the lead for the first time in a long time over Twitch. Twitch has wonderful subs coming in from We Just Played, Ian7J2, Kanoke for 62 months, and Dixie Cup for 32. Good to see you the other day, Dixie Cup. But yeah, I guess YouTube, Jeremy single-handedly carrying YouTube memberships and leading the number over Twitch. So thank you, Jeremy, for that. We have our first caller coming in just a moment. Cubby's going off to grab them. If you are on Twitch, you can hover your cursor over the screen. A little purple crown will pop up. You can click that. It'll tell you if you have a sub available, a Prime sub in particular. So it's a nice way to ensure that you're using it frequently. It's something we added. Our first caller of the night is here. Yami. Yami, where are you calling from?
I'm calling in from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And what would you like to talk about on the show tonight?
So, first of all, I would like to extend you the opportunity to tell me that I was right. The previous couple of times that I've called in insisting that one of the lower bottom 4 teams would take down a top team. Since I've done it, called in with some of those calls, Shopify's actually done it not once but twice to the same team. So
okay, but
did we
in that call, and that is an honest question, in that call, did we define 100 Thieves as a top team? Because I think we've all been very confident in C9, TL, and FlyQuest, quite frankly, and maybe in some cases too confident given some shakier games from some of these teams. But how confident were we in 100 Thieves at the time?
I think everyone was pretty consistently rating them as top 4. I don't know if we specified the top 4 at that point.
They were.
I think we just
top 4.
Okay.
But yeah, like because I think my second call was me calling in to respond to the opinion that it's the top 4 and the bottom 4, and 100 Thieves is definitely getting talked about isn't the top 4 at that point.
Yes.
So
you're saying, here's your moment, Travis. Yeah, look, congratulations. I think that many callers take big swings on the show. I still feel as though SR beating 100 Thieves is an upset in a way that I feel like it sounds like. Well, let me ask you, would you say that was an upset?
Wouldn't this weekend, I would have maybe said it was the first time that it happened.
Okay.
I think that SR has been kind of steadily increasing as the group stage went on and was consistently looking a lot better week over week. And I would say 100 Thieves had a lot of really shaky games in the group stage.
Yeah.
I'd call it like a 40-60.
I'd say that's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
40,
I'm not
60
super surprised. Yeah.
I was a little more confident in 100 Thieves because I just felt like whenever it got to playoffs, like a lot of their more experienced players would really step up. I think the thing that most surprised me was the manner in which they went out, which was a solid 3-0. And I would have expected that if SR won, and I think, Cubby, I don't know if you feel the same way since you were saying 60-40, that it would have been, probably a 5-game series, but at least a 4? Or did you think it was going to go? I guess we had a call last week that said they could see it going 3-0 one way or the other. I think was one of our takes. But yeah, what did you think?
I had the series probably going long just because I think both teams kind of play sloppy. Like SR have been a part of the longest games of the split, but with everyone. whether it was the FlyQuest series, whether it was you guys, Srtty, like that 2-1 was what it took gold, silver, bronze for the longest games of the split.
Yeah, I think it was like 40+ minute back to back to back.
Yeah, so I again, having this be 3-0 was a little bit surprising to me. I don't think the 100 Thieves did themselves any favors with the Game 3 draft, so for me, that was kind of over.
Definitely not.
Once they loaded into the game. If I was surprised by anything, I think the contracts has been really good all split, and it kind of has been him trying to overcome his team. I was surprised at how he did just get the best of River, especially for like 2 out of the 3 games, or I think in game 2. I have a lot of respect for River as a jungler too. I'm always happy when Juan gets to have big games, and it really, like, if anything, I know that he was the strongest player, but I feel like him playing as well as he did was, if anything, a surprise, because it felt consistent, and that's good.
Well, he did have a shaky game 1.
Yes, but everyone had a shaky game 1. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also sort of the nature of Zin that if you just get behind, you're sort of screwed.
Yeah.
That kind of ties into my actual take now that I've finished gloating.
Okay, now that you finished gloating, give us what's your real take is.
So my real take is I think Shopify is going to beat TL this upcoming week.
Oh, you're still going in.
All right, here we go.
Double or nothing. And I'm speaking as a TL fan, so I guess a little bit of like the background context is I'm a bit of a salty TL fan right now, given how they've been playing the split. But I do think that if we look at how the roles have been going across the map, I'm not going to do the like Hotline League thing of like going role by role.
Thank you.
But I will kind of highlight the 2 spots that I think are the most relevant, which is I think there's a massive difference in the relative skill of the jungle players, and not just in the skill. Well, I should say I would say performance more than skill right now. I think has had peaks that are higher than what he's shown at this moment, and I think Yuji's had peaks that are higher than what he's shown at this moment. But I think the combination of sharing time and obviously sharing practice time, and also just Yuji, adjusting to tier 1, kind of thing, I think are resulting in a lot of shakiness in TL's jungle role. I think that the past couple of series we've seen from them, jungle has been like a very clear weak spot. And I don't really think they're going to fix that in a week, because the way that you fix that kind of thing, especially on a 6-man roster, is just time for the teams to kind of figure out their play style and figure out how to sync up. And then the other part, I think, so that's where I think Shopify has a very, very massive, like, clear advantage. And then the other thing I think is what it's going to come down to is obviously like the single like bright spot of TL this entire, well, kind of the last like 2 years, the part that's always been like regarded as sort of above reproach, have been Core and Yan. And I think it's going to come down to like, can they put TL on their back and carry them across the finish line versus Shopify? And I think Core and Yan have actually had a couple shaky series recently, or at least Core has. So I'm not as confident that they'll be able to generate the sort of massive leads to force the game to the states that TL has been winning from, where they've just managed to like brute force their way through games that they maybe should have. I wouldn't say maybe should have lost, but just they've been playing kind of sloppy in ways that I think teams have taken advantage of. And
it
teams
just
that are
sounds like
maybe
they don't
higher,
have sort of the space to be able to compete around like solid map movements and that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Well,
and
go ahead. Final thought from you here.
No, yeah, I think that Shopify will be able to punish them for stuff more than Big was able to. Probably not to the level like FlyQuest. No, they played Cloud9. Probably not to the level Cloud9 was able to. But I do think that they'll have a harder time, and some of the gaps that we've been seeing will come to a head, and Shopify will manage to take the series.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I know normally I throw to Cubby in these situations, but Srtty, I kind of want to get your take on the chances that Team Liquid gets upset again or that Shopify can upset again with Team Liquid?
I think Team Liquid has a small advantage. I think when I say small advantage, I'm talking like very small, like 55-45.
Oh wow, okay.
I think it's really, really close. I mean, both teams were losing to Dig and Scrims the last 2 weeks, like consistently. Obviously, Dig just can't play on stage because we have like problems or something. I don't know. We suck. But Shopify and TL are very close. I think that Shopify is maybe a bit better than TL is in the early game. I think TL still rely on Yon a lot as a crutch right now, and Core. I think they rely on him very heavily. I don't think Bevo will necessarily be exploited in lane or anything, because he's like pretty solid at that part of the game. But I think this series is going to come down to who has more direction and general cohesion, which is where the 6-man situation might come to nip TL in the bud. Because if there's any kind of a disconnect, I think that Shopify will win because of how close I think the series is going to be. I could see it going 5 games.
I think that, and I don't know what you've heard, Cubby, but I feel as though, and I've heard that Team Liquid is pretty much all in on UG at this point in time. That's the rumor.
I heard they only did that because they were versus us.
Interesting.
They thought it would be a
Carry jungle?
Yes, only carry jungle. So they didn't think that we'd put Shaden on tanks in that series. And so they wanted to have UG in for every game to contest the carry jungle pool and Fearless. And then if it went deep enough, I think they might have put in Umpty for like a game 4, game 5 to play characters that UG didn't.
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, I think I'd rather have like Umpty Maokai than UG, or they're both decent at Poppy, but I think there are some champs where Umpty can be a really good voice. This is close. I think the curious thing for me in the jungle pool is that, for me, like, we've had a lot of junglers that have been promoted that Srtty's like played with and against, right? From NACL.
Yep. Played with a few of them.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously Shaden's on your team, right? I've always felt like UG was the strongest, at least in the last like year and a half, 2 years, even when he was on FlyQuest with Faisal, right? So I'm kind of curious to see, because I feel like the person that still has been the most competitive with the top of the table in terms of junglers, it has been Contracts. Like when looking at competing with Inspired Blabber, I think particularly, some River too, but I think Contracts has actually done a really nice job at trying to compete. And I think that if anyone's going to compete out of the players we promoted, it's like with those guys in terms of Inspired and Blabber, it's going to be UG. So I hope that we can start to see more out of him. It feels like he's been fine, but hasn't done anything like super special yet. So I'm hoping that we get to see something like that. But it should be a fun series. I don't think that this should be... Like, I think it should be pitched as TL favored, but if SR wins, it shouldn't be a massive upset. It for sure... I don't think it's a massive upset in terms of its current team strengths. If you look at history, what it would mean for SR as an org, what it would mean for like TL and FlyQuest really being the top dogs of the LTA/LCS for the last couple of years, it would break that. And I think that would be quite significant.
Yeah, I mean, I would frame it as a massive upset in terms of just like everything outside of this exact specific moment in time. You know, like if you have, because I mean, I'd have to go back and look, but like for the most part, teams like Team Liquid have not been ousted from a playoffs by a team like Shopify in a long time. So
that's true. Not since 2023 when Contracts and Palafox did it to TL.
Yeah,
but that was different. The energy was good, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think I think that this would be one of the crazier playoffs events and would defy a lot of the history. Like, it's funny because, not to go too off topic, but when I put out that video about the LTA brand thing, you know, there's a group of people who just, anytime anybody's complaining about LTA or LCS, they come out with like their personal grievances. And one person was like, yeah, and one of the reasons why the league sucks is because parity between teams is so poor. And I'm like, okay, well, let me introduce you to, I think, every other league in the world. But like this would somewhat fly in the face of this. Like the fact that we have Srtty on the show right now saying that he thinks Team Liquid has a slight edge over Shopify, I think is like, honestly, we went from a world where I thought there was really only, 4 or 3 teams that were super competitive to a world where like some of these other teams started to make pretty compelling cases for themselves. Like I remember halfway through the split, we were talking about, oh yeah, these bottom 4 teams can't really touch anybody else. And then, Srtty says that a Dig was beating TL in scrims, and that we've got a 55-45 situation here with our semifinals coming up. And so it is a pretty big surprise. I don't think anyone would be predicting Shopify as like a decent contender to eliminate Team Liquid from playoffs.
Something I do want to say though is that I think that TL is a lot more resilient due to the fact that they've played together for so long than Shopify is. So I think that if something bad does happen to Shopify, they could just bomb out of the series. And I don't think that's going to happen to TL, no matter what happens during scrims or anything.
Yeah.
That sounds true. I mean, obviously, Srtty has a much more interaction with these players as people, but like Contracts does seem like a very kind of emotion-driven player, which is great when he's like on. And we've seen him like like a couple of series, like where for like a couple of moments he was like the best jungler in the world, but we've also seen him kind of off kilter, and like I would jump into second that, I guess, and say like I do agree with that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I mean, it sounds like the three of us, unless Cubby, I'm misunderstanding your end, is none of us believe that Shopify are the favorites for this weekend, like the way that you do. But I will say that perhaps it is closer than anyone could have predicted outside of maybe yourself going into this match. So we'll have to see. I personally feel like Team Liquid will just figure out a way to pull it out. But I don't know. Maybe it won't. Anything here you want to shout out at the end?
Just shout out Sealol. It was fun to watch them in the studio at the finals this past Saturday. That was really cool. Shout out, I think as always, I'll shout out NACL. It's been a really great split, kind of like production-wise. Future of the league is there. Shout out my friend Happy Blue Guy, and yeah, I guess that's those are my shout outs. Didn't have anything super prepared.
No, you're good.
No, good.
Thanks so much for the call. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
All right. I think we're good for another call before we take our break. We have a scam train going for the next 7 seconds in chat, so if anybody can hear this before, it's probably delayed, so it'll die. But I appreciate everybody who subbed, including Kimmy LOL with the Prime, Insert Coin, Shauna Tonin for 79 months, Oh Hi Vega, Avura for 68, Slawcat, and then over on YouTube, thank you to Studio Spicy and Nino for becoming members. I think it's about tied up. Maybe Twitch might have taken the lead, but thank you Slawcat and Avura actually for those long months there, and Shauna Tonin as well. Thank you, everybody. All right, we have our next caller here, Icebreaker. Icebreaker, where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Indianapolis.
Go Pacers.
Yeah. Are they in the NBA playoffs?
Finals.
They're in the finals.
You can return to your Knicks fan group chat, Travis. They're out.
No, I can't. I think that they're still going to talk, that group chat of friends. I think they're still going to talk about the NBA in the night. They messaged me. Somebody messaged me this past week and said, are you done with the group chat? And I said, only until NBA finals is done. All right.
Well, they have like 3-day gaps between games, so you got a while.
A couple more weeks.
Yeah, like two more weeks.
Yeah.
All right, whatever. Anyway, okay. Icebreaker, what do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so this is kind of a take / kind of a question for Srtty. With All Pro having come out, I really dislike the current way that All Pro is conducted with League. I feel like, you and a lot of the other top laners, the other 5 or the other 4 that, obviously did not make All Pro, were all not that far off from Impact this split, at least. And it's something that I've thought for a while. There should be some individual component to All Pro. Maybe it's 25% of your All Pro score. I don't have a good answer for that. And maybe it's like a 1v1 tournament, kind of like how they do side selection in the LPL. but some way for you to showcase your talents that got you to the league, in an environment that's more isolated. Because kind of like I look at basketball. Basketball is a game where there's no scaling. You are the same player the whole game. If you make a 3-point shot, you don't suddenly get to grow, a quarter inch taller, and there's no compounding advantage other than just your lead in points. Whereas League, that's dependent on your draft for the game, how you have to itemize, what role you have to play based on, the champion that you've picked. So I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I'm just curious to know all of your thoughts on that.
I have thoughts, but I'll let
You can go first,
Srtty
Travis.
go first. Oh, Cubby, what do you think of this? Because I'm not a traditional sports fan. I know obviously All Pro and things like that are very traditional sports inspired. So I'm wondering what you think of this.
I mean, I feel like when I'm like pricing in head to head, I even use that when explaining why I went with Thanatos over Bwipo, right? Like I know that Bwipo bashed him in the head to head, but I thought that pound for pound Thanatos had a better split, right? I do think that sometimes people look at that. Like, for example, I think the Blabber last summer got MVP in first team pretty much because in the last week of regular season, C9 2-0'd FlyQuest. Like, because this happens, and like there's recency bias, I think, sometimes in the back half of the split, which frankly, I'm okay with a little bit. Like, everyone has their different take on how they're going to do all pro. For me, I definitely like looked at the stats, and because I go through the tape, it sometimes is just like a vibe check, right? Kind of like what Srtty's talking about with impact and some of the power, like things that he gets right, even if he's not playing at his best. I still felt like he was my third team. So again, like I feel like this already gets priced in, and it'd be really hard to find a formula to help do it. And some of the formula that does this is the fact that like fans get to vote, like they're a part of the ballot, right? I know that for NACL in the past, I feel like we had the fan vote make up like 30%, and then the broadcast was 70%, something like that. So
yeah, in
yeah,
in LTA it is at most a tiebreaker
one.
because it is
Yeah,
one
exactly.
vote and there's a bajillion people who vote. So
yeah.
I think that the way that All Pro is done is flawed, not necessarily because of the system, but instead because of the people who are voting on it. I think that oftentimes people, especially people in the scene, become very biased to the narratives that they hear, like through the grapevine. So especially like people on the broadcast team, or I don't know necessarily who votes on it. I don't look too closely at all of that, but I do think that what the pros say outside of just the gameplay that happens really heavily influences the perspectives of the people who are voting. And I also do agree with Cubby that Bwipo being first team All Pro probably had a lot to do with recency bias, because I think over the split as a whole, he had less solid performances than Thanatos did up until the point where he completely blew Thanatos out of the water. Not
Yeah,
saying
like
that
the
I think
SR series too. Like he
Bwipo
went
is
off.
worse
Right?
than yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I think that Bwipo is worse than Thanatos or vice versa, but I am saying that if you look from an objective standpoint, the more consistent side of the coin was probably Thanatos. But yeah, I don't know how you'd really like introduce individual components to All Pro. I feel like if there was a 1v1 tournament or something, it would have to be a separate thing. Because I think the point of All Pro is that it's reliant on votes, which like inherently will always make it a bit flawed. But that's part of what makes it fun, you know? I don't hate the system that they have right now, but I definitely don't think it's perfect.
Now that I've actually filled out a ballot, the one thing I wish they'd include is maybe just a screenshot of like important stats for every role. I know that stats don't say everything, but I do think that at least like for some of the media voters too, maybe that like I'm someone
It
where
could help. Yeah.
yeah, like when I'm voting, like I have GOL up and I'm like kind of doing a vibe check. Like, okay, like I think this, because I mostly go off of eye test, but sometimes I go use stats to just help back the eye test, right?
Yeah.
I think that could be nice to include maybe like in the ballot in terms of like how it's administered. But I think that If anything, I wish that there were more voters, because I feel like if you do throw more people in the pot, usually you're able to find the right answers at the end. I think that the
I can
teams
agree
doing
with
the
that.
vote,
I think it's
they
just like
can't vote
statistics in
themselves.
general. The bigger the sample
Yeah,
size, usually the more accurate it is.
like I mean that's part of why I got to vote for sure, right? Because there used to be more media members that
There's
voted in the
so
past.
few third-party media members on this ballot. I was just looking at
It's
that.
very sad.
I wonder if they
Yeah.
did not reach out to Mahir, or if Mahir just like didn't want to do it, because like yeah, there are 5 third-party media people, and me, Cubby, and Medios are 3 of them. And like Medios, like he is third-party media, but he's kind of not.
Yeah.
And like he's doing like a C9 show or whatever. I'm not trying
Also, like,
to
the
cast doubt on him,
co-streamers.
but it's just very different than it used to be.
I'm shocked the co-streamers didn't get a ballot too, because like I think everyone would love to see Dom's ballot, and I'm fine with that being official, right? I don't think anyone else would like have beef with that. I mean, those guys are really
I
smart
would
about the
not
game,
have
and they
any
watch all
problem
of
with
them.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
in many ways, yeah, I feel like maybe you do something where it's like if you co-stream X% of the, I think there's already minimums that they have to co-stream in order to be a co-streamer, but like
Yeah,
maybe
so
if you
you're on,
reach
you
some
get it.
threshold, you get a vote or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, because that is a good call out, because third-party media have just shrunk so much that it's kind of crazy. They even gave the TikTok guy a vote, which is wild to me. I don't know how he's getting one, but it's a joke I thought Cubby would respond to more. Maybe he missed it.
It's fine. I kind of missed it. I was responding to someone in chat, trying to engage with everyone here, Travis.
I said they even gave the TikTok guy a vote.
He did. He should have one. Like, again, I don't care how educated you are as a fan. I feel like if you watch all the games, then get more votes. And like again, I think more votes just end up balancing this out.
Yeah. Okay, so my take on this is like, I don't think icebreaker. So first off, I can respect the idea of like, hey, if we're going to recognize pro players for their achievements, I would like to, maybe you would like to add some sort of empirical process into the mix, so that it's not just sort of like, oh, people who have recency bias or who whatever are like thinking about this. The challenge is, I think you're either all in on that, or you're all in on this voting thing, because I think it starts to get really strange. Like, for instance, you mentioned the idea of like a 1v1 thing. Well, one, you have to kind of figure out when that's happening, how it's happening. Is that 1v1 thing only representative of a single slot in time for the player? Like maybe the player was really good and then the patch changed and they shifted out, and now you're really heavily focusing towards one period of time in like a 2.5 month long period. But you also end up in a situation where it's like, is this happening before everyone votes or after? If you do it before everyone votes, then people are going to mostly just use the 1v1 as a like, well, I got to vote with the 1v1, because if I vote for somebody else, I'm going to get flamed by the community because this has already happened. If you do the 1v1s afterwards, then like the community's like, what are you talking about? Srtty crushed everyone else in the 1v1 competition, and you guys put Whippo and Thanatos in the first place. Like those guys went out early or something. So I also think 1v1s are not necessarily representative of the entire strength of a player, because I think some people have weaker laning phases, but then are amazing in like team fights and that type of thing.
Yeah.
I think even giving stats is really rough, because I understand what Cubby's talking about. I think you kind of mentioned it, Cubby, right? The idea of like, here's your stats packet to people, to voters, but I think you end up in a lot of situations where then the voters open up the stats packets and just sort of vote along stat lines. And so then you're just in a weird situation where you're no longer really doing like a vote. You're, especially because all this stuff becomes pressure or public, people might feel pressure to vote in certain ways and that type of thing. So I think that there are lots of ways in which we promote players and celebrate players. And maybe there's another way in which the broadcast can like do showcase stat stuff, but we do kind of do it a little bit in terms of these graphics and stuff that air on the broadcast, which, by the way, the LTA graphics team this year has been the best graphics team I think I've ever seen.
Well, the animated lower thirds.
Yeah, all the lower thirds
playoff.
are insane. Like they're so good.
Honestly,
like
the
they're
production
just
in general has been so good, no?
Yeah.
I feel like
they've
it's
done
actually been really, really good this year.
phenomenal. Yeah. They've done all these different things. I keep forgetting to tweet it out because I know that sometimes this stuff gets linked in like Slack channels, and the graphics team and the stats team and everything they're doing just deserves like huge love, because they just
yes,
really
100%.
creative. Yeah,
I agree.
Actually, Jet, what do you? I've been waiting to ask a player this. What do you think about how they're doing like the winners interviews now, where you go into that room and like the fans can interact with you during it. Are you a fan or no? Because I think at least picturesque wise on video it looks cool. I just don't know how, like what the players think.
I think it's only a net positive. The more fan interaction, the better.
Okay. Yeah.
And obviously, like after you win, you're feeling great. So like, just throw it at you then, you know?
Get in there. Yeah.
No complaints. Yeah, exactly. Like take advantage of that. Because like
Yeah.
usually pros and like, unless you're like Bwipo or somebody else who loves to like interact with fans and like lives for it, normally they don't really care to like interact with the fans that much. I'm personally a fan of it, but even I don't do it as much as I necessarily should. But like in that moment, I think even like the most shy players, like hell, even like Shaden would open up. I think if you put him in that situation, he'd be so happy. I mean, coming
Shay's
off
more
that high.
talkative off camera for sure, but
Yes, a lot more.
we know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that they're doing that. In some ways, it reminds me a lot of the days when I've always been sad that there used to be many years ago the LCS. Everybody like emptied out into the parking lot between matches.
Yeah.
And there were fan meets outside, and like a lot of people were mingling and interacting and stuff. I actually still feel like that's the best way to sort of do like the fan experience and community experience. But I think this gets pretty close to it. I also think it does a pretty good job of advertising like the value in coming to the studio if you're visiting Los Angeles or you live maybe in San Diego or
Yes.
something like that.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it's fun to see. I've gone a couple times with people who are friends of mine to the studio, and like they will go and be in the background, and it's like very fun for them. So I think it's a good thing. But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, Cubby.
It wasn't a terrible question. We want to return to the caller though.
I'm just kidding. I'm trying to. Cubby is definitely exhausted after his trip, and I'm trying to keep him awake by poking fun at him throughout the evening.
I was derailed. It's fine.
Yeah. We were talking about All Pro. Yeah, I don't feel like there's a way to add in extra stuff to this voting process without just sort of like corroding the main aspect of this process. You know, I that's why I feel like you either go all in on like we use this, like what the AWS thing that they do for power rankings, like oh we use this AI thing to determine the best top laner or whatever, using a bunch of data, or we just looked at stats and like we're highlighting people along stat lines, or you go all in on the like, hey everyone, who do you think was good? You know, and I honestly think the who do you think was good thing is kind of cool because it gives a lot of talking points to the people who voted. And I think it's fun whenever you get to see like a coach or a player like troll the vote by voting for some goofball or something, and then they get flamed for it or whatever. I think this sparks more conversation icebreaker. So I guess I just disagree a little bit, but I want to make sure you have a chance to respond. So what do you think?
More voters
Yeah.
for the co-streamers. That's my thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. Like I know like what I'm proposing is also, a very imperfect idea. I think my biggest thing is like when you look at like an all pro vote in a traditional sport, and I'm gonna go back to this just a little bit. It's like you're playing the same game the whole time, kind of. Maybe you're down in points, but like, I was thinking about when I was,
You don't have like patch changes during basketball,
Yeah,
Yeah.
or like you don't have a game where it's like, oh, Core JJ is playing Poppy and decides to, invade your jungle for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, and now your team has to respond to that situation. But like, if you're in the top lane, like you're having to now help your jungler out in that case. And so I don't like, it was very interesting to hear kind of all of your different responses to that. And I don't think that any of them are wrong. I just think I'd like to see, I think kind of it really comes from a point of I want to see more opportunities for players like Srtty or, any of these players on teams that play less games in a split to just kind of show, who they are as a player, and kind of being able to have a little bit more individual, like a more individual portion of all pro might give that. Because like I think like we don't know who's going to win MVP, but like if Inspired wins MVP, that's going to be off the back of his 3 lanes really performing well, and is Inspired the most valuable player in the league at that point?
Yeah.
Yep, he is. Definitely is. I
Yep.
promise you he is. This guy's the
Yep.
best,
Yeah.
maybe the best player in the West. Not
Oh,
gonna
It
lie.
sounds
yeah.
like we
No,
might
I-
know
it's
who
not a
the
maybe, it's a
MVP
yes.
is already.
Yeah.
He's
Oh
really
no,
good.
you can look at the All Pro votes. It's pretty clear. And I'm not saying that Inspired is not cracked, but like if you put Inspired on DSG, then it becomes, oh, Inspired is the most valuable player in the league because he's doing so much to elevate that team. Like I think Inspired just has an easier job on FlyQuest. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be MVP, and that's
I
kind of
wouldn't
my
agree with that.
His team
That's
is good. He still
Yeah.
is. He's still the guy.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean that's fair, but
Yeah.
it's kind of my same thing where it's like it's hard with All Pro. I wish more players got more chances to kind of show that they're really good. And
I get that a
Bring
lot.
back ProView.
I think that is-
that's something.
yes, please let me pay for ProView. I
Yeah.
paid for ProView with Overwatch League like 6 years ago. That was so nice.
That would help.
Yeah, like
What were you gonna say, Srtty?
I was
Sorry.
gonna say I think these days, just with the way that people vote, it's like virtually impossible for a player on a bottom 3 team to be in any of the All Pro teams. It's really, really hard. I know somebody who did it in the past is actually one of our coaches on Dignitas Lira. I think he was first team All Pro on a 9th place team back in the day. But I think these days, like I really understand where the viewer's coming from because with a caller, it's just not going to happen in this day and age. It really isn't. And
Chad is
it
saying
would be-
B-Boy
it would
got
be
it
nice if everyone waits to
first
see that.
last year. I'm trying to remember. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
B-Boy in
B-Boy-
spring. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was second All Pro. Srtty, if you had to give one player on a bottom 4 team an All Pro shout, who would it be?
What are we considering bottom 4 first?
Just regular season. So it would have been 100 Thieves, Dig, Lion, and DSG.
Saint.
Okay, that's fine. I know Revan put Saint as first team All Pro, and I thought about Saint by putting Saint in mind. He was quite good this year.
Yep. I think it should be. I think the 3 best mids in the league. I'm not going to mention my mid laner, of course. Love Kenny to bits, but it's probably Quad, Quid, Saint, the best, or maybe you can throw Loki in there. It's like these 4 are like interchangeable with each other. I think Quad, Quid, Loki, Saint. Or does Evernote?
Well,
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this for a bit. Icebreaker.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
This was a really interesting conversation to listen to. So thank you for letting me come on and talk about that and mostly listen to you all talk. But yeah, it was really cool. I'd like to shout out Tyrese Halliburton, Rick Carlisle, Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin, and the entire Pacers organization. Pacers in 4, baby. Yes, sirs.
I didn't
Have
know.
a good night.
First, I was like, "What are these names?" And then I realized Cubby was laughing. Oh, they left. I didn't even get to say thank you for calling and goodbye.
It's gonna be OKC in 5, sadly, but it's fine.
All right. Guess what I just unboxed everybody? It's time for our ad break.
I'm gonna go with a computer. of
Please tell
sorts.
me it's Magic the Gathering.
No, that's after
Oh
the
yeah,
stream.
that's
This
a
is
case.
Oh my
the
god.
new H9. Oh, how can I do this? I need my microphone with the case. This is the new H9 Flow. I gotta balance this right. Hang on. Okay, we're pulling.
Is it a
We're pulling up my
case or is it a
stats.
full PC in there?
It's a
Travis?
case.
It is a
It's a
case. So this is the H9 Flow Series 2025. The revamped H9 Flow Series, which I'm holding in my hand right now awkwardly, is our largest and most capable case. This is NZXT telling me this. It's built for high-performance setups and bold showcase builds. It expands on the airflow-focused design of the H6 Flow, and it features an angled front-right fan layout for more direct cooling. Let me see if I can twist this around so that people can see without breaking it or myself. It has support for 420 millimeter radiators on the front, the top, front right, up to 9. There's the angled side. There you go. On the top or front right, up to 9 140 millimeter fans and a 120 millimeter rear fan. The H9 Flow delivers massive thermal performance potential. RGB and RGB Plus versions come equipped with new F420 RGB core fans for vibrant lighting in a sleek all-in-one design. It's available in 3 variations, each with different pre-installed fans. thank you so much to NZXT. You can check out their link. Yeah, Numi just put a link to this product in the chat, but you can also go find it through nzxt.co/Travis, and you can use code Travis5 if you want to purchase it. This is their new case. They also sent me I realized I have it in the living room because I just unboxed it on camera. They sent me the new Kraken Elite 420 RGB Plus fan and cooling system. So thank you so much to NZXT for sponsoring the show. This is the first time that I've ever held up a giant case, I think, on the show. So I'm going to have to delicately put this back down, but I appreciate them. Yeah. Please, more ads like this. Watching Travis awkwardly hold this is pure comedy gold. You know, I'm just trying to showcase the product. This beautiful case. All right. We're back.
Right, next caller.
Thank you, NZXT, for sponsoring, and make sure you use the link in the description. Off Cubby goes to grab the next caller.
Is it cool if I get some water really quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, sweet.
Thank you to Dark Tarkanis for 30 months. Hybrid BDP for gifting a sub to Brikachu. Brikachu wasn't already a sub? Betrayal. JB for the 27 months. Big Angry Hobo for the 84 months. And then Dex over on YouTube. Dex and Big Angry Hobo, thank you for being members. Big Angry Hobo with the double tap on YouTube and Twitch. We are stalling really quickly while Srtty is getting back, but he will be here shortly. And while we have the caller in the chat, we're going to wait to announce them. I'll say that after the stream, or after the show on stream, I'm going to be opening. Where is it? I put it somewhere next to me. I'm going to grab it in a second. But a Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering collector booster box, which is provided generously by Wizards of the Coast because I'm an MTG ambassador. So I'm looking forward to that because I've not opened a collector booster box, and those are not available for quite some time still. So thank you to that. But so stick around on stream if you want to watch that. Also, I'll upload it to my Magic channel, and if anybody wants to find the Magic channel, it's secret, so you just have to go find it on YouTube. Rage is here.
Which collector box?
What?
Which collector box?
Final Fantasy.
Oh my god, I'm so jealous, man. I want one so bad, but they're $700. Like, how can I do that? It's too messed up.
You said the price, not me, to be clear. I could tell you the MSRP, I think. Yeah.
Ooh.
Where did I put that? I just set it down so that I could do it on this. But yes, it is. I know that those are in high demand, and I'm really happy that I got one. All right, Rage is here. Rage, where are you calling from?
Maryland, right at DC.
Maryland. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I just think the FLY glazing has gone really far, and that the gap between FLY and C9 is just really overstated. And I do think C9 is a higher ceiling. NA's problem historically, I think, just especially internationally, is solo lane just getting extremely gapped, at least in my opinion, and just obviously the macro differences. But Thanatos, even his improvement from last year, has just gone quite insane. Loki, even over the course of the split, has improved a lot. And even just looking statistically, I just think the difference between them and FLY is like way overstated by just the community and the broadcast. Like, they've lost 2 more games. They beat them at the beginning of the split in the positioning phase. They have an overall winning record against them this year. And even in their loss against Summer, they got stomped. It was mainly just C9 losing more than it was FLY being extremely proactive and beating them in an insane fashion.
I can tell you're a paid caller because you use the phrase positioning phase. And I feel like I'm only ever heard
haters as much as anyone else. But
Riot people use that phrase. Who calls it the positioning phrase or phase? All right. So you're a C9 believer, and you think that FLY is overrated.
I think generally just community sentiment, they want FLY to be good because of their performance last year. I mean, I loved watching FLY do well against Genji last year. I'm an NA fan, right? But I think even since winter, everyone's really wanted FLY to just be the best team in NA, just narrative-wise. And I think that's kind of carrying over into like overstating the gap between them and C9. And I think they're close teams. And series between them should be close in playoffs.
All right. Srtty, presumably you've scrimmed both these players, or both these teams.
Quite a bit.
What is your take? Is the gap overstated? Are these actually neck and neck teams?
I wouldn't say they're neck and neck. I think that Fly is definitely better, but I wouldn't say that they are so much better that the series should look anything like what it did the last time they versed. We played right after C9, and Sven was walking off the stage, and he looked me in the eyes, and he was like, well, that was pathetic, as he walked off the stage. It was kind of funny. But I know that Fly normally beats C9 from what I've heard from people, but, like, recently, but, like, I don't think it's that bad. I think that C9 can take games off of Fly. I don't think it's going to be a one-sided 3-0 or anything like that. I think what the caller is saying about the solo lanes is relatively true. I would say on average, when Thanatos is on his champions, he's a better laner than Bwipo is. But I think that Bwipo has certain strengths that Thanatos lacks. I think Bwipo sees the map in a better way. I think that he impacts certain situations and understands his role inside of a composition better than Thanatos does on average. But I also understand what he's saying in regards to when NA struggles internationally, the solo lanes are usually getting blasted. And I think maybe the Korean players will have a bit of an easier time playing versus the other like Eastern players at an international. So I can see the value there, but I think on a macro level, Fly has a higher chance of winning versus Eastern and international teams than C9 does. I think C9 is going to struggle because I don't think they'll be able to actually generate meaningful leads in lane because the individual level is higher internationally. And then I really worry about what happens after that point because I think C9 relies on their lanes doing well to succeed.
Covey, what do you think?
I have a very similar diagnosis. I actually want to approach this though, like from kind of the fan perspective with what you're saying, because I do think that that's interesting going into this one. So, Rage, I think everything that you're saying about C9 and FlyQuest it being close so far, despite the last series being a smashing, I agree with that. But I will say that I feel like why it was close in Split 1 was C9 just got off to a much hotter start than FlyQuest. And FlyQuest were making mistakes that, it was unforced errors on the Rift. Like, I remember them taking fights they probably shouldn't have taken in the first game or series they played against C9. I remember, like, Smolder mid-games where they're fighting, like, first or second grubs. It was really weird to see because I felt like the greatest strength of FlyQuest when they were doing really well at Worlds was that they were taking scaling comps, but they had this just fantastic read of, okay, this is how far we can bend before we break, and then this is where we're stronger. And that was a really big difference for me with FlyQuest and why they had success internationally and were able to take games off HOE and Gen G, playing different stuff and playing really well with it. So for me, a lot of the fan focus on FlyQuest, I feel like it was, okay, we know this team is really good. They did give us one of the best chances at an international event that we've ever had when you look at what they did against Gen G. So we are going to put our faith in this team. The fact that they have two young players and players like Bwipo and Inspire that have had international success, right, and are very good. For me, as a fan, that makes sense. I also think as a fan, it makes sense for C9 to be like, we have almost 2 years in a row now where C9 has been a better regular season team than a playoff team. And that's something where if they win this game, they make it international. Like, it's been a bit since we've had that for C9. And I'd say historically, most fans put their faith in C9 because that has been the org that has had the most success internationally, right? So I feel like this is kind of a C9 win gets like a monkey off their back because it has felt like in the past that they have not played up to their expectations in playoffs. So I feel like I'd pitch it that way. And if I had to talk about the series, I agree with everything that Srtty said in terms of diagnosing the teams. I'd probably give this a 65-35 over to FlyQuest in terms of how close I have this.
I want to ask you, Rage. Do you agree with the idea that FlyQuest has been more consistent than C9?
Honestly, not really. I mean, if I was actually before I was on call, I was looking at the Games of Legends. I was just looking at C9's history for the most part. They only lost one game in the beginning of the split to 100 Thieves off the back of Blabber flashing into people with Renata W. That was whatever. But then they went into Terror for the most part, bar that 1 week where Vulcan was out with the funeral and all of that. FlyQuest, yeah, they've been pretty consistent for the most part, but I think Bwipo's performance especially has been kind of overstated. I mean, you guys, I did check the ballots as well, both based for voting Thanatos there, but yeah, I think consistency-wise, C9's been fine for the most part. They've had a few stumbles in terms of like random late game comebacks versus Lion and TL, but
I just even mean not just the split, but I feel like this past year or maybe 9 months or whatever, counting Worlds and that type of thing. Like, I bring it up because I know you mentioned the international aspect of the team, and like you feel like C9. I think you were saying C9 has a better chance internationally, correct?
I do believe that. Also, just
Yeah.
because I think something that's kind of gone under the radar is the fact their TL is. I mean, Fly's doing a 6-man roster like TL with Gak Ghost. I don't know what they're going to do with that in terms of summer, but if that comes through, I think a lot of what Bippo provides to the team is going to be lost, and I think that hurts them personally. But that's a different topic, I suppose.
Yeah, different topic. I just, for me, when I think about a team that would be, I'd be more interested in sending internationally. It is FlyQuest. I mean, honestly, I wish we could send both, but it is FlyQuest because I feel like if you look at the last like 12 months, 9 months, whatever you want to say, something that extends into last year, like they have been, in my opinion, more consistent than C9. And I'm not saying that C9 hasn't had like a really solid split. I think they have. They had, a couple of oopsies here and there, but like overall, they've been pretty good.
They're the second best team.
Yeah,
like, these are the two teams that are. Or if we could send two teams, I'd love to send these two teams.
Yes.
Frankly,
Yep.
I feel like
100%.
everyone's favorite.
Yes.
Also, something
go
about Fly that I think hasn't been mentioned yet, which is a reason why I'd prefer them to go international, is they just have bigger champion pools. They have more
True.
things that they can
Thank
pull
you.
out against
Oh.
Eastern teams than C9 would be able to. And I am personally of the belief that if you are challenging Eastern teams at the game that they practice, you're not going to win consistently. You're not going to win consistently. They have more reps on it than you do. I'm going to kind of quote what Bribo said when he was talking Shopify at the start of the split. I don't think it really rang that true then, but I think it does ring true in this case. They've played against better players than us, playing the same comps that we're going to play versus them, and they've beaten them. So why would we win doing the same thing that the other teams did? I think that we need to have our own flair, and we need to challenge them in ways that they haven't been challenged before.
I've been on the show just like fucking shadowboxing people saying that C9's pools like weren't big enough, Srtty. And yeah, I'm glad you said that. I really feel like that could be an impact in 5, and part of why I have it 65-35 and not closer, because I feel like that is a little bit further FlyQuest favor than what it should be.
I mean, I think that on just like piggybacking off of that, I don't think C9 has bad champ pools. I want to just make that very clear. I think they play everything they need to play.
It's just
I
narrower.
just don't think they do anything more.
Yeah,
I think
their
you
strats
need to
are
do
narrower.
more.
Yeah.
I think you have to do more internationally. That's all.
Yeah, I suppose it's true. I think one thing I will say is, especially in NA, I think Thanatos opens up a lot for them draft, like especially versus TL. Like I don't think TL can ever beat this version of C9 because they're banning Gwen. They're losing 2 bans every time for Gwen Yone because APA doesn't play it. They're never going to give Thanatos Gwen. But I agree, internationally, I think Bippo can open up a lot more.
Yeah, I think what we really want is we want finals to be a blowout 5-game series that is just super epic. And there's so much outcry about the fact that we can't send both of these teams, especially if like FlyQuest, if they go, for instance, like they end up doing really well, that there's just an immediate pushback on the idea that LTA should only send one team.
Well, no, LTA is sending 2 teams, Travis. It's just that LTA North is sending 1 team.
LTA North should send more than 1 team.
Yes, I know. This is the fucking problem and why we should change back to LCS, because I spend 85% of the year just referring to LTA North as LTA because that is the only LTA any of us experience in the North. And then in these moments, we have to clarify. And I saw a really great comment in reply to my video. I think it was on Twitter, where somebody was pointing out, like maybe it was on YouTube comment, how awkward the graphics are whenever they talk about the history of the league, because they have to be like, this is the first pentakill in
saw it on YouTube.
The LTA North situation. It's just like it's consistently everybody trying to figure out how to say like this their stat line across LCS and LTA North history, and it's like, fuck, man. What if there was a simpler solution for this and you just called it fucking LCS?
Something I do want to say though is I don't want, as much as I want LTA North to have an extra spot, I don't want LTA North to get an extra spot at the expense of LTA South losing theirs.
Yes.
I think the regional pride, and I guess you wouldn't necessarily call them a wild card, but like regions like that should have representation. I think that's really important for any international competition. And I think taking that away for the benefit of us is also wrong.
What if, Srtty, what if like the seed was fought for between the top two.
Still not good
LTA
enough.
Seoul.
I am scared about that because I don't
Yeah.
think any team from LTA South will make it, and I think that I understand the idea of like only the best team should go to the international, but I also think it's important for every region to have some kind of opportunity to compete at that international.
Yeah,
at the
these
same
leagues
time.
die if they can't do that. Like
Yes.
you have to have that carrot in the end of the
You're
stick.
killing South
Yeah.
if not a single team from the South goes to Worlds or goes to MSI or something like that. I think it's extremely bad for their product.
Yeah, I would have to like. Here's what I'll say. That is
Mhm.
my impulse too. However, I would want to talk to some of my LTA Seoul
Mhm.
counterparts, which I have not done yet. And I would want to talk to them privately about it because I think they could never publicly be like, no, it's fine. But I think that there is something within my suspicion is
Mhm.
that there's something within the LTA Seoul soul, which is like they are such diehard fans of their players that even if their teams lost in a qualifying match to compete in an international event, that it would not impact them the same way that it does for us. Because like I would say it feels as though LTA North fans have become
Mhm.
jaded and frustrated about our performance internationally in a way that it doesn't feel, and like they'll just be like, I'm not going to watch, these teams don't win. Why would I ever watch LTA? They're the Yanyos of the world, right? Where it's just like, why would I ever watch this shit league whenever I can go watch LCK and
Mhm.
LPL? And the sense I get is that that is not what LTA Seoul fans feel, is that like their teams could just lose all the time, they could lose for
Mhm.
qualifiers and stuff. So I hear you that very well could be the case, but I actually am curious how much LTA Seoul viewership would change if they were not like gifted a spot within the LTA system. Something along those lines.
I think you're right about this in the short term, but I think in the long term it will take a toll no matter what. Because I come from Oceania, where the fans were extremely diehard for their teams.
Yep.
But after a certain number of years, people just give up. If it happens for long enough, people will give up.
Yeah.
I mean, I love LTA Seoul and like their fans. Actually, I don't think those guys are ever giving up. I think the right way to go about this is what they're doing for Split 3, which is the third seed. That you fight for it, and I like that. But I think that each region needs representation at the international events, at least like Raleigh. If you're gonna fight for that, whether it's the way we did it with First Stand or what we're doing for Split 3, totally fine with that. But I do think that there needs to be an opportunity for them to go, and especially send one team to MSI at Worlds at minimum.
Yeah.
I'm a Srtty. Yeah.
Well, that's a different topic entirely. We keep.
Yeah.
I'm appreciating that we keep going off on these talks because I think they've been good, but do want to make sure we get through the rest of the show. So, Rage, I know we've been all over the place. Anything that you wanted to add to any of the conversation before you give you your shoutouts?
No, it's been a pretty good discussion, so appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah. Thanks so much for calling. Anything you want to shout out?
I'll shout out Dom. I really enjoyed his content this year, especially providing some insight into the behind the scenes of C9, especially like with LPL and all of that. His co-streams are pretty cool. Shout out your sponsors, I guess, because rough times for esports. But yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time. All right, we have 2 more callers to go, and then
I might pull one more. We're gonna see how this next one goes, but we're gonna
Yeah.
get into your video here, Travis.
Sure. Travis started inviting players again. Nice, says the Hentai Man. Well, Hentai Man, I'm going to speak in a language that you might be able to understand. I've been getting fucked for the last year in terms of inviting players to the team or to the show, and finally one of them came through for me. So, yeah, I've been trying to invite players, and eventually I kind of gave up. So I appreciate that Kangas was nice enough to go find Srtty here, and that Srtty was kind enough to come on the show. All right, we have ShmoltZ here. ShmoltZ, where are you calling from?
Hi, calling from Chicago suburbs.
The Chicago suburbs. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the LTA LCS branding. So pretty on point here. Just for some context, I posted this in my post, but I've been watching LCS religiously. The split before Bjerg joined, actually, when it just became NALCS. So, and I've watched every game since. But this year, I realized was the first year I have not watched a single game of LTA, and it really sucks because I'd watch LCS on LCS weekends. It'd be a banger weekend, and then I'd tune in to your interviews afterwards, and it'd be great. And it's sucked not having that. But my take on that is that LTA rebrand wasn't the only reason I stopped watching, but for the league as a whole, I think if there's no change, like this is gonna be it. I think it's gonna be the end of the at least
this is
really,
my
really
concern
hurt the league.
with this topic is that it all kind of bleeds in together, and it's very easy for people to get like super doomer. And I try not to do too many doomer calls, not because I'm trying to head in the sand, which is something that I feel like a lot of other people do in the scene that frustrates me, but mostly because like the doomer calls, and I'm not saying that's what your call is ultimately going to be about, but it's like they sort of feel very nihilistic. Like, what's the point of anything? Why continue caring? Why continue watching? And there's not too much interesting conversation to have there at a certain point in time. So I try to be constructive and thoughtful and all this stuff, and I know that that's probably where you're coming from too. But I'd love to ask, because I've seen a lot of people say this in response to my video. A lot of people said like, Travis, it's just a name, like LCS to LTA, is it really that big of a deal? I told that anecdote of the person in my that I talked about in the video, where I went out to breakfast with them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, if they changed it back to LCS, maybe I'd start to watch again." So, why has the name and the brand specifically impacted your decision to not watch?
I mean, yeah, and you explained it so well in your video. I've honestly been waiting for someone to put it the way that you put it, and someone specifically in your position. Like, I have so much respect for you guys that run this show, the on-air talent, Flowers, Emily Rand, Raz, all those people. And I think the way LCS had such more meaning than just, the League of Legends Championship Series. It was like when you're in game, people are saying like, "Holy cow, that play was LCS," or like, "Hey, I'm gonna go watch LCS," or like, even when I was introducing my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, to the game when it was the NALCS, she would call like other leagues that were pro, like LCK and all that. She would call it LCS, like it was just the definition of pro league, and it was a brand that had so much so much value behind it. And I think if you weren't there, especially, you don't. I don't know if people feel how much of a vacuum that's created now. And like I said, the rebrand wasn't the only reason that I stopped watching really, but it feels like it's been bash after bash, and it's like I love this game and I'm super optimistic about the league and I want it to do well. And that's honestly why I hopped in here for like the first time since 2017 when I predicted IG would win Worlds. I want it to succeed and I care about it, and that's why I want people to talk about this, and I'm really thrilled that you finally said it. Like, you finally said the taboo words that this was a failure and we need to talk about it being a failure, because if we don't and we just pretend like this is just the new normal or this is just business as usual, it seems like such a downward spiral. And if I'm getting hit so hard to the point where I'm not watching after over a decade of watching so consistently, I can't fathom, how it's hitting for other folks as well.
Well, yeah, you said a lot of the things that I've been thinking about and hearing from other people and all that stuff. It is difficult for me when I see people say, "Who cares? It's just a name," because so many things are in a name. For instance, for some reason, despite my name being Travis, everyone wants to call me T-Gaff or the Gaff or T-Dog or any of these different things. And I'm always like, please use my name. And then they don't. They use these other nicknames. And names have a lot of meaning to people. And it is exhausting having to explain to everybody who is familiar with it, what the LCS is, what the LTA is instead. I know there will be these pithy comments that I see that are like, what do you mean? You just say these 4 sentences. And I'm like, yeah, I'm tired of fucking explaining those 4 sentences. And then there's a million questions that come afterwards. And ultimately people think, oh, this isn't the thing that I used to like, whereas I think if they had just kept the name and been like, yeah, but now we compete in this like America's thing, people are like, oh, that's kind of cool. So let me ask you this. Let's say they announced that the league next year was going to, I don't know, like replace 100 Thieves with an interesting team from somebody else. Let's say another content creator was getting in or something along those lines. And we're going to restore one of the spots for MSI, or maybe, we now fight with LTA Seoul for it. But the league was going to be called LCS again. Would that be enough to get you back in?
Yeah, I think it would. It would get me enough to, start watching again. And then as long as things went in that correct direction, I think it would go back into that momentum of watching consistently. Because ultimately it comes down to it, and this goes beyond just LTA/LCS, like league as a whole. I feel like people have really been hungry for like that love of the game from the developer and league side of things. Like, I think that's why you see so much success in things like LEC, Los Ratones, and things like that, because it's so clear how much they give a shit. Like they clearly care about the game, and they clearly care about like, producing a product that you just want to view and you get captivated and you get invested in it. I feel like that's just what's been lacking in what was previously the LCS for the past couple of years. And then everything with the LTA, I think just fell flat. I mean, I could talk for another hour of just like why I think objectively it was a bad decision with the merging of the regions and the formatting and things like that. But like that was just not what we needed. But to answer your question, like it would definitely get me back on the hook. And, as long as things continued going in that direction where it's like, they're listening and they're doing things that, viewers care about, then I'm all game. Like I want to watch, I want to enjoy it. It just sucks right now.
Yeah. Srtty or Cubby, I'm happy to just tank this because I know you both do stuff with the LTA, but I'm wondering if either of you have any thoughts you would like to share.
Srtty, if you played in the same exact league, but it was called LCS instead of LTA North, would you be more excited?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's like really what this is. Everyone wants the feeling of what it was, and we weren't given a proper goodbye. We weren't given like a reason for this to be like the next great thing, and because of that, I feel like that's why everyone wants to go back, right? Again, like Travis and I, we set up here and said, just make America's and call it that, right? So yeah.
I don't want to say too much on this because obviously I play inside of the LTA, but I will say one thing. Before this year, I never watched a single pro game ever. When I won Academy, I had never watched a single game of LCS at the time. I'd never watched a single game of LCK or LPL. But despite that, I still knew what LCS was, and everybody that I knew what LCS was. And I don't know if I can say the same for LTA and players who are playing League these days. Like, even on the North American server, I don't know if they all know what LTA is. But I know that if they played, like, even for 2 or 3 years, they would all know what LCS is. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to take, like, the emotion out of it, that's a really good point. Like,
I mean, the emotion matters so much.
It does obviously matter so much, but even just looking at objectively, like, the brand value behind LCS, it'd be one thing if they put, like, a ton of resources behind LTA and everyone got super excited behind it. But, like, it's just such a flat brand. Like, there's nothing behind it. But there was so much that you gave up with LCS. It's like the opportunity cost is terrifying. Like,
they just, like, again, I think a lot of the history and like the points that Travis makes is very valid. Srtty, did you really not watch any pro play?
No.
You watch like POVs of the good players, yeah?
No.
Oh my god! How did I not know this? Or are you just
I hate
deciding to tell
watching.
me?
I thought
I
this
hate
was
watching
mentioned
other people
somewhere.
play games.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I hated watching other players play rugby when I was growing up in Australia.
Yeah.
Basketball, I was never interested in it. I don't know, I'm weird. I'd rather play it myself than watch somebody else play the game. That's just
I
me
mean,
though.
I understood that when I was playing 10 hours a day, and then I realized that I can't do that. So props to you.
I mean,
Even
I watch
that-
every
even
single
then,
game now, by the way.
Oh
Like,
yeah, like
I'll watch every
um,
LCK match. I'll watch all the big LPL matches. Like, I can tell you exactly. Like, okay, Zeus, Siwu, Jace Gwen walks in the first lane bush in Jace hammer form, Wood second lane bush, melee
Yep.
Qs on Gwen's head, uses the slow to kite out the first E, procs phase rush with Q auto, and then gets prio like that. I can tell you exactly what they're doing in these games now, but like back then, nothing. Sorry, I'm a nerd.
No, that's fine. I mean, that explains how you got the highest LP. You weren't spending time learning; you were just
Yeah,
playing.
don't watch League. It's a distraction from getting better at League.
Oh my god! I really liked the video that TL did with Drew, right? Your editor Travis.
Yes.
Shout out to Drew Fawcett.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I really liked.
There's not enough reference to the fact that he works for me. I feel like in that video.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
There isn't.
Yeah, it's
I
like he's
feel like you should talk to
maybe
TL about
intentionally because maybe they just wanted to be like, we found this random noob on the street and shoved him at our facility. So I get it a little bit, but I'm also like, this guy's been around. In some ways, it's more interesting to me because he's been around so many of these players for so long that it's kind of a cool opportunity for him to like step in there. But
yeah. What I really liked about that was the performance coach. I know his IGN name, but I'm gonna blank on the actual name. I think it's 17. But they had like a 70% playing, 30% learning, right? And that's how you're gonna spend your time. And I really like that. I know, like when I was the student director at my college, that's something that I actually learned a lot from like the Hearthstone guys, because literally like their practice was just like theory crafting. And then I learned that a lot of that was like CS too. Like CS, they might have a scrim where they just sit and plant smokes for like 2 hours before they actually play. I was like, well, we don't really do this a lot for League. I thought that was really interesting. So I'm glad you're watching tape now, Srtty. And the memory serves you well. But yeah, that's wild. I did not know that.
But to get us back to what we were talking about, which is the LCS, LTA stuff. One of the things that I will mention here, because I wanted to make the video concise and emotional and just sort of like a strong appeal. I didn't get into the weeds on a bunch of stuff, but there's like a bunch of practical reasons for this too. Like I think we all knew that a lot of like the SEO stuff, search engine optimization, and like social media stuff and all that stuff would get impacted.
Not being LTA.
Whenever we switch to like a brand that is not as like prevalent on the internet. But like it has not, the LTA stuff has not established itself from what I can tell. Like I don't see a lot of like LTA autofills. Like I don't know if I search right now on Google LTA schedule, it does not autofill on Google with LTA schedule, where if I search LEC schedule, wow, look, there's a really nice, beautiful graph at the top that shows exactly who's playing when and all this information. You can go back in time. It's at the top before any of the results. In fact, if you search, let me try incognito just so that I can get like a fresh thing. LTA schedule, you do get LOL esports stuff, which is nice, and that's kind of new. But it is just like the videos and stuff. It's just a completely different page than searching LEC schedule, where you get like the actual schedule and all this stuff.
I use Wikipedia for everything, and sometimes that's wrong.
Yeah, like there's a ton of stuff that just doesn't work anymore. God, even I was speaking of Drew. Hopefully he doesn't mind me mentioning this. He was trying to look at the standings for the thing that today we were talking about the playoffs, and so he's like going to lolesports.com. So this is both a lolesports.com and an LTA issue, because you go to lolesports.com, and if you just want to look at the standings, you have to click into events and standings, split 2, then you click on LTA, which immediately autofills you into the LTA Seoul bracket, which is fine. It's got to show one of them, right? And then you have to be like, okay, wait, I don't recognize any of these teams. I'm not paying attention to any of this stuff for most North American fans. And then you have to go find the North bracket on that page. And like eventually you do it, but it is just like such an inconvenience compared to all the other leagues on here that you could just click into and immediately see what's going on. So it's just like there's just all these little nitpicky things that again, like people are like, well, what's the big deal? I just go to the website page, but for a lot of people, it is just a little bit harder to do everything, and at no particular benefit. We didn't really gain anything from doing this and all that stuff. And I saw a lot of people come out afterwards, and they all went like, "Oh, what a surprise!" Like, "Oh, he's finally saying it," or whatever. And I'm like, "Yeah, look, we all knew this was not great." I would say, for me personally, it feels like it's I tried to be optimistic. I tried to be hopeful. I was like, I don't think this is going to be good, but like, let's see, maybe we can revitalize a little bit of stuff with like this interregional play, or maybe like there's going to be a big brand campaign, or maybe any of these things, and it'll feel really good. And I need to just like not already, there was no point in some sense in being negative and giving up on it before it like launched. But I do think, 5-6 months in, it's fine for all of us to be like, hey, okay, right, you tried, it did not work, it's time to go back. And I know that it's expensive to do that, and I feel like months ago I was like, guys, they're not going to go back. But I think the HBO thing makes me feel a little bit more confident that Riot will be like, okay, maybe we can do this. And like, I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. The LTA rebrand stuff is also just such a waste of money. And like, I'm kind of like at the point where I'm just
thank
like,
you, Travis.
well, I get aggravated because Riot is like, oh, esports costs us so much money. And I'm like, okay, but a lot of this, I know teams didn't figure stuff out. I know like a lot of things didn't materialize the way we were, but like, why the fuck did you guys spend so much money on trying to build like a Twitch competitor with Riot Esports Network, or REN?
You brought it
all
up.
These broadcast centers, I'm like very skeptical that these things are actually more cost effective. For those that don't know, they now run these centralized broadcast centers that are, there's like the North America one is up in outside of Seattle. I'm not calling for anybody to lose their job though, but that was like a lot of money, and I'm not particularly, I've yet to be told by anybody that like, yes, these things are very cost effective and they save us a ton of money, etc. And then they just do shit like this where they're like, time to LTA rebrand. And I get that like consolidating the leagues was probably saved you a lot of money, that downsizing teams saved you a lot of money, but I'm like, look, at this point in time, whether it's next year or the year after, I think we're going to go back to LCS. I just feel like it's going to happen. I feel like they're going to wake up and be like, okay, yeah, this didn't work. And they're going to have spent all this money doing like iconography and updating websites and creating all these other platforms and doing all this stuff. And then they're just going to have to do it all again to go back. And I'm just like, guys, like, you want to save money, and yet you make decisions like this that don't feel like you're saving money. It feels like you're just actually burning more money. So it's just very confusing to me and very frustrating as somebody who is a fan of the sport. And again, I think that oftentimes people villainize these individuals online because fans are very passionate and they're like, these are the worst humans ever. And I think a lot of times they come from a good place. But I don't think that like their plan, I see people online that say like, their LTA plan is just another way for them to like figure out how to force this all online so that they don't have to do it because they don't actually want to do it. I'm like, guys, if they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't do it. I don't think this is some master plan. I think they're just making some dumb decisions that I don't understand, and that so frequently they come out with a dumb decision and the community and the pundits and people internally all go, this is a really dumb decision. And then, the people at the top go, no.
We got this.
I think it's a dumb decision, but you'll see. And then a year later, they're like, all right, guys, we listened to you. It was a dumb decision. And it's just like, everyone tries to stop you from doing this, guys. Like, I don't know. It's just so goofy. It's so goofy.
I'm really glad you went on that rant, Travis, because I didn't want to bring up the money thing. You did. Shout out to you. The SEO stuff too. I mean, the only other thing I'll add is that when the LEC rebranded, it was because in the SEO, like they were EU LCS and they were behind. They were not showing up first. And to put into perspective how expensive it is to rebrand, I don't know what the check was at the end of the day, but they used the same company that rebranded for the English Premier League. The that's pretty expensive.
You're
to
talking
think
about the
size and
LEC
scope of
stuff
that.
or about
Yes.
yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm
the
reaching
LEC
back.
thing
Like
is
that's
funny.
good perspective.
The
They
LEC
needed a
thing is just
rebrand
funny to me
because
because
SEO.
that was a
Yeah.
good rebrand.
It was.
Because what
They
you
needed it.
did was you created a unique brand for this league.
Yes. And SEO.
And for
played
some
a part
reason,
in that.
they took the inverted lesson from that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is like, hey, you know what was great? Whenever we made this league its own identity. What we should do is take two leagues and make them one identity. And I'm just like, how was your lesson? Like I think they were just like, you know what, we learned rebrands are great. It's like, okay, but you didn't figure out why rebrands were great in this situation. So it's just so goofy.
Shout out to a random chatter that also pointed out that the YouTube links, you got to go to /LCS to find the LTA North YouTube, and /LTA North is a 404 not found. So I think we can end with that one, Travis.
All right, whatever. Thank you so much, ShmoltZ, for the call. I know you activated my rant card, but anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
No, man, I could talk to you guys for hours. I mean, you're all dead on the money. Like, exactly spot on. But I'm really glad the conversations are happening. Thanks so much for having me on. And shout out to you guys and the on-broadcast talent, commentators, the analysts. I mean, that's what's really holding it together, to be honest. So really appreciate you guys. But thanks again for having me.
Okay. Thanks for calling in. Did we swap a caller out of the waiting room?
Yes, they had the same take, and I think we beat the dead horse on this one.
Oh,
so
I'm
we have
sorry
one more
to them.
caller. Yeah. I never do this, but he can DM me a take next week and get on because he hung around all episode.
Yeah.
So,
well, sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry to you, caller. I'm sorry to this man's.
We do have one more if we're ready, and Srtty, you'll be able to participate in this one. So
we have a call that Srtty can talk about.
Get me in.
Yeah. Thank you to Mary Katz for becoming a member over on YouTube, and then thank you. I laughed because I just looked at the time and I realized that, like, at the start of that call, I was like, "Oh, we've got time for a couple more calls," and then I just fucking rant for 10 minutes. Thank you to Gorks for 5 months, who says, "Thanks for the Expedition 33 recommendation. Incredible game so far, dude. Expedition 33, best game I've played since Baldur's Gate. At least narrative game. I really did like Balatro as well." Highly recommend everybody go play that game. The FTC disclosure, they gave me a copy of the game, but they're not sponsoring me and didn't pay me to say this or anything like that. I was just given a copy, and I'm so happy I was. Insert name gifted the sub to Gorechi. Thank you. She needs that sub. And Bowen, thank you for the 2,000 bits. Very generous. Cool to see you at the LTA the weekend before this one. It was cool to see you. Hope you're doing well. Duda John Wall is here. Duda John Wall, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Vietnam.
From Vietnam. Okay, well, we love our long-range international callers. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I think the LTA will be the third best region at MSI.
Oh! So you think it's going to go LCK, LEC, and then LTA, right?
I think LPL is the second best for sure.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
The OG does look good. Well, we're gonna have to see what happens.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So why? Okay, you are. Let's say you're. Can we say you're unbiased because you're not part of either North America or Europe?
Well, I went to school in America, so a little bit, but I'm
we're gonna
LCP
ignore
fan. Yeah, I'm an LCP fan, and I think they are by far the worst region. They're terrible.
I mean, the Oysters, they just had a banging best of 5. They came back. It was a reverse sweep.
I think talent's terrible.
Okay. Well,
but yeah, I think LTA is better than LEC.
Love to hear it. Okay. Why do you feel this way?
Yeah, I think Casey kind of fell off. And I don't think Skumon, I don't know how to say his name, Skumon is as good as Yike. So I think G2 is also worse. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Srtty, you were talking about how you're a Kana enjoyer, so watching some KC games. Obviously, it's going to be a fun one coming up. with them versus Mad
Yeah,
Lion.
I think Kano would be the best top in NA if he played here. I don't think that's that debatable either, because I think that he does what Thanatos does, but better, and more well-rounded. Do I think that pound for pound KC is better than FlyQuest? Not necessarily. I think that FlyQuest as a whole is pretty good. Do I know if they would be the best team in LEC if they played there? Not sure. They would be top 3 though, I can tell you that much. I think that it's hard for me to tell which region is better, because if Dignitas can take games off of FlyQuest and Scrims, it's hard for me to believe that FlyQuest would be the best team in another region at the same time. You know what I mean? It's like
that's so self-disparaging.
That's kind of rough, but you know.
I don't know.
Even our Dignitas player is like, oh
I
god,
think you're good players, Srtty.
these shitters were losing to
appreciate that, bro.
Dignitas. Like, how are you talking about they're good?
I think you're a good player. Oh, you know, scrims sometimes wins and losses don't always matter. If they're ugly, they're ugly. You know, it happens. Maybe they're trying
It
stuff.
happens. It does. Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
I would be really happy though if LTA ends up being better than LEC at MSI.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
I mean,
Especially given that it's in North America right now. So
yeah. MSI is happening in Canada, right?
Yeah, Vancouver.
Okay, I see.
You gonna go?
Not sure yet. Not sure.
I think you should. It's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah,
would recommend.
I would be going if it weren't for the fact that I have a golf trip with my dad that week.
Oh my god.
It's 2 weeks long, Cubby.
Yeah, Cubby, you can make it.
Priorities.
Stop by Vancouver on your way to wherever the hell you're going. I guess Arizona, right? That's where you go golfing.
Chicago this time around, but anyway.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I have not watched a lot of EU. I pretty much only watch JoJo because Go JoJo, and then I've watched a little bit of KC and G2, so I can't really rate them right now. Also, just following LPL, heart goes out to anyone that, like everyone that's tried to do that in the past, because Jesus Christ, that is just a ballistic region when they have 2 best-of-3s a day. But
that is crazy.
I know I made a tweet that made the rounds of like, oh, this is a classic Cubby take, but I have been keeping up with some LCK, and with what I was saying with seeing with the LPL in the middle of the split, and also just like how teams are drafting in Fearless, I'm actually really concerned for anyone being able to take down Genji or HLE. I don't know if that's going to be possible. So I think MSI is going to be like, can a BLG or a different team be strong enough to actually challenge them? Because like if Genji goes in this forum, like it's their trophy, unless HLE or someone else wants to really challenge them.
I think Genji is going to wipe the floor with everyone, and I think that
They're so good
every
right now,
team
man.
from the West is going to get completely destroyed, and even in the games it looks like they can win, they're just going to lose.
Like even Duro's.
You know what I
okay
like
right now.
about
It's
Srtty is he's so
crazy.
optimistic. You know, he gives everybody a reason to be excited for international play.
I'm doing my best over here.
So he's like, if I can't go to
lie the
MSI, I
fears,
don't
man.
want
I can't
anyone to
lie.
watch MSI.
I'm curious. Right now, it feels like BLG is going to be one of the teams to rep LPL, and they're always one that can be competitive, like top to bottom. I don't think we're going to get another LPL flop, even though I don't think the LPL is actually quite as strong. I think they're a little bit closer to like LEC and LTA North in terms of competition, but legitimately with Fearless Draft coming back, it to me, it feels like, or it's going to feel like, going back to like season 5, where it's like, oh my god, the Koreans are here with like the Korean teams, and I'm really concerned. I know that like in a world you might be able to be like, but Fearless Draft adds so many more like variables and variants that you can take advantage of if you're a team that may not be quite as good. But the way that like they're drafting and playing in Fearless Draft, it almost feels like they're more inevitable, just because their fundamentals and how they play the game is just so much better. So I know that like it's a hot take to say that LCK team won't drop best of 5, and that is, but it's part of the fun. But I really feel like the LCK, at least the 2 teams that are going to MSI, if it is HOE and Genji and then even a sneaky KT in there, I feel like it's going to be problems for everyone else.
It sounds as though we're fairly inconclusive on if LTA will be the 3rd best team at MSI.
I haven't watched EU, so I can't really say. I'm sorry, but I'm here for the hopium. Let's go with that.
I haven't watched enough to say in any concrete fashion which one I think is better. I haven't looked closely enough at it because I'm spending all my time watching the Eastern teams. But I think that FlyQuest could be. It wouldn't be shocking to me if they were better than LEC. C9 though, I feel like it would be really close. I could see C9 losing to the LEC teams.
Is there any world where we get an LTA matchup against JoJo?
I hope no, not this split. I hope
he's still
I hope
in
to
it.
God that I know. I think he has to win against KC though, and I don't think
it has
they
to be
win.
KC, and then
Yeah. JoJo is still my favorite flipper, but I don't think that he can flip a KC win. I think JoJo's been playing pretty good though. He still has games where he's off and on. Shout out to Supa though. Supa's been playing really well, which has been really good to see.
Something else about MKOI is I think their top lane is not bad. Merwin, he's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
Actually, like, respect.
Yeah. I would love to see JoJo at MSI. That'd be great. I mean, I'd be super.
Dude, wasn't the whole story that APA was just kind of styling on JoJo all the time, even though JoJo was supposed to be the best?
He gatekept him.
Okay,
here's what we gotta do.
We got to get TL to MSI, and then we got to get JoJo to MSI, and then and then we get like the really hype match, and APA just does it again. And so Team Liquid comes back to life and does crazy stuff.
I like this narrative, and then we could say, because Dig took one game off TL, we were like technically like the third best team in the league or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm down for this.
Sure.
I like this.
We'll give it to you.
This makes me happy.
Yeah.
You could be a top 3 LEC team, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, easy.
Why not?
I love that. I find it so funny, like the fact that APA did gatekeep JoJo, because like Srtty would have been competing in Tier 2 at this point. If you would have told any of us like 2, 3, 4 years ago that APA would be like 3-0 against JoJo for going to international events, we all would have called you crazy. But props to Ian. He just brings that up, you know? It's pretty wild.
Yeah. All right. Due to John Wall, I don't know if it's going to happen, but you've got your take in, and so whenever it does happen, because we will just be the best, the best of the worst, I guess, in this situation, then you can call back in during MSI and you can be like, "Hey, I called it all the way from Vietnam." So, thanks for the call. What time is it there?
It's 12 p.m.
12 p.m. All right. Well, it's good. I'm glad that we're good timing for Vietnam viewers. Anything that you would like to shout out here at the end?
Shout out NZXT, and I my English is not that good, so I couldn't articulate my take very well. But shout out to NZXT.
Awesome.
Shout out to Hotline League.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think your English is better than you suggest, but
you did great.
The fact he said articulate makes me think he's better than most Americans.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is my favorite thing. We always get so many international callers who will call in and be like, "Pardon my English. I'm not at the skill level at which I would appreciate being able to effectively communicate the arguments I'm trying to make on this show." And I'll be like, yeah, you're good. All right. That is the show, though. Stick around on stream if you're watching. I'm going to be doing some cool stuff hanging out on stream afterwards. But, Cubby, what do you got for me?
This was a fun one. Shout out to Srtty for joining us, Jet. Thanks, man. This was a lot of fun. Glad to get you on the show. Yeah, man.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, besides that, LPL English for all your LPL needs coming up here as we go throughout playoffs. And then we have NACL playoffs coming up too. Conviction versus Dark Zero. And then winner faces Luminosity Gaming on Thursday and Friday. And that will wrap up our split. And yeah, I'm excited for playoffs this week. I think the FlyQuest C9 match is once again very hype. And excited to see. I think a lot of people are hopeful that SRTL can be close. Not just fans, but also folks behind the scenes too. So I think we're gonna have a good weekend of LTA games. So definitely tune in. And shout out to you, Travis, and our sponsors. It was a good time this week.
Yeah. How about you, Srtty? What do you want to shout out? What do you want to plug?
Shout out my family for always supporting me. For my stream, I think it's Srtty_lol. Not sure. I don't actually know my social links, but also shout out to my girlfriend. She comes out to my matches every week, even though she's an hour away. Drives an hour there and back. She makes posters every single time she comes out, and she started doing like a little bit of work with like LTA in regards to press stuff. So that's pretty cool too. I think she's taking some inspiration from Travis, trying to do some interviews or something. But yeah, shout out to her.
Does she have a TikTok that?
I think she does. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I think I saw her TikTok recently show up. Actually, it's been really cool. There's been a lot of people that I think TikTok knows that I visit the studio, so it's been showing me a lot of people's TikToks from the studio. And
Nice.
so I think I saw hers pop up on my.
She makes
my
like
thing.
vlogs about her trips to the studio whenever she comes to see me.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought that was really, really cool. I love. It's really neat to me because I feel like we haven't seen a lot of fan content for a while, and especially on TikTok, and so that kind of stuff is just neat. For myself, I have a couple different things. One, thank you, Srtty, for coming on as always.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's always cool whenever pro players do it, and I think you're the first one in a while. Secondly, stick around on stream. I'm gonna be doing some #MTG ambassador stuff. I also was on Commander at Home. The reason I missed yesterday's matches in person was because I was filming with Brian Kibler and Olivia on Commander at Home. We recorded a couple episodes. I assume that both will make it to the light of day, but they were pretty fun, and that's the first time I've been on it for a couple of years now. I was there in the very beginning. So for people who do watch Commander content and know who Brian and all those folks are, stay tuned for that. It'll come out in the next couple of months. Also, I will be... I just have so many Magic announcements. I will be at MagicCon the weekend after LTA finals. So if you're going to MagicCon, go hang out in my Magic channel on Discord, because I'm going to be throwing some drafts for my community members that you can participate in for free at the community area. I'm not going to have them pitted up on the website because I kind of want to get all of you first come first serve. So if you're going to MagicCon and you want to do a draft with me and some of my friends, please go hang out in the Magic channel and let me know. Discord.gg/Travis. And then the last Magic thing I have is, it's a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, but tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time, there's going to be an announcement. I am teaming up with FlyQuest on a project.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yes, this is the full disclosure. After almost 14 years, I think this is the first time that I will be taking compensation from a team. So, if that soils my reputation and everybody thinks I'm not independent anymore, then I get it. It was a tough decision, but I really wanted to work with them on this project, and they kind of came to me and said, hey, what would you like to build? And I think we've built something really, really cool. So there's going to be an announcement tomorrow. We're going to have some really cool people involved in this. Ironically, it is happening during Final Fantasy release weekend, which may or may not be the same weekend as LTA finals. So that was unfortunate. We actually didn't realize it for a while because LTA finals information was hidden in a YouTube video. I hope Mark is still not listening at this point in time because he and I had an argument about it. That's something that'll come out tomorrow at 10 a.m. The other thing that's happening tomorrow is I'm flying to Mexico for a trip that there's a travel agency that is based out of, I believe, Nebraska, that is named Enchanted Travel. And they reached out to me at the end of last year and said, hey, Travis, we like the show a lot. We'd like to send you on a trip. And you could talk about it, maybe make a vlog about it and stuff. So I'm only going for a couple days, but I'll still be working, unfortunately, but I will be at a very nice resort that they are sending me to. So the first time something like this has happened, actually, I guess the second time, because Law Class famously sent me to Hawaii back a decade ago. But thank you to Enchanted Travel. I'll probably talk about them in future episodes because it's kind of a cool little trip they're setting me on. But that's the giant laundry list of stuff that I've got going on. Thanks again, Srtty. Thank you, Cubby. We will see you all next week on Monday for Hotline League as we head into the finals. Peace.